'Cause I remember so much joy when I was 8 years old.
Thanks a lot, really. Thanks. This, you wouldn't...
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Have you ever wondered what really happens when a seemingly perfect love story between two celebrities suddenly comes to an end? Valerie Bertinelli and Eddie Van Halen, a couple who shared more than 25 years together, were once the ideal image of love, a sweet, wholesome TV star and a wild, legendary rock guitarist. They had it all with fame, success, and a family adored by millions. But behind the scenes, away from the spotlight, their relationship was far more complicated than anyone ever imagined. Now, at 65, Valerie is finally opening up, sharing the real story behind their split, the heartbreak she endured, and the strength it took to start over. What truly happened between them? Why did a love that seemed unbreakable fall apart in silence and sorrow? Stay with us until the very end, because what Valerie is about to reveal may completely change the way you see their story forever.
So much has happened, and there's so much that's gone past. Your ex-husband, Eddie Van Halen, passed away.
So much has happened since then, and so much has been kept hidden. Eddie Van Halen, the legendary rock star, passed away not long ago, leaving a significant chapter of their story closed. Their union, once a captivating fairy tale that stunned America, was much more layered than the public ever knew. Valerie, the golden girl of television, was adored for her sweet and wholesome image as Barbara Cooper on the hit sitcom One Day at a Time. Eddie, on the other hand, was the embodiment of rock and roll rebellion. As the founder and lead guitarist of the band Van Halen, Eddie didn't just redefine rock guitar playing, he represented pure freedom, untamed energy, and the chaotic spirit of rock. When they met in 1980 after a Van Halen concert, Valerie was just 20 years old, already an accomplished star with 2 Golden Globe Awards under her belt. Eddie was living a completely different life, surrounded by the world of late-night parties, explosive performances, and the untamable chaos that came with being a rock star. On the surface, their lives seemed to exist in separate realities. Valerie's structured, disciplined routine on the One Day at a Time set, shaped by tight filming schedules and a carefully curated public image, clashed with Eddie's rock and roll unpredictability. She was polished, respectable, and adored by audiences, while Eddie was wild, spontaneous, and free-spirited. Yet, despite their glaring differences, something sparked between them. Valerie, intrigued by Eddie's magnetic presence, arranged a meeting through her manager. What followed was the unexpected collision of 2 contrasting worlds, order versus chaos, tradition versus rebellion. Their connection was electric, undeniable. Just a few months later, in April 1981, they married, a shocking union that captivated the public. A primetime TV sweetheart and a rock legend, tying the knot. The press couldn't get enough of them, and their relationship, defined by contrast, became a national obsession. But as the years went by, the contrasts in their worlds became harder to ignore. Valerie, who had always lived her life in the spotlight of television, struggled to reconcile her public persona with the chaos of Eddie's world. And while their love story was once filled with passion and excitement, the reality of their differences began to take its toll. Valerie's decision to open up about the real reasons behind their split sheds light on the complexities of their relationship, revealing a side of their love story that had remained hidden for so long. When Valerie Bertinelli and Eddie Van Halen first came together, their love story seemed like a dream. A TV sweetheart and a rock legend, they appeared to be the perfect couple, united despite their wildly different worlds. But as anyone who's lived through a complicated relationship knows, appearances can be deceiving. Behind the dazzling union, their marriage faced challenges that no one could have predicted. Valerie's career was demanding, filled with long hours on set and tight filming schedules, while Eddie's world was consumed by rehearsals, studio recordings, and endless tours. As their professional lives grew more demanding, the time they had together grew painfully scarce. Valerie found herself constantly flying back and forth, filming during the day and catching late-night flights to catch up with Eddie on tour. Life moved at a breakneck pace, and carving out quality time together became increasingly difficult. But their struggles went far beyond just busy schedules. Eddie's world was one of impulsive decisions, late-night parties, and a constant whirlwind of music and chaos. He lived moment to moment, detached from any sense of routine or structure. Valerie, on the other hand, was grounded and practical. She was raised on family values, shaped by the steady rhythm of television production. She needed stability, a foundation Eddie's lifestyle couldn't provide. As time went on, the gap between them seemed to widen. They still shared moments of love, success, and happiness, but the emotional distance between them began to grow. Valerie remained the rock, doing her best to hold everything together, but even her strength couldn't bridge the growing divide between their two worlds. Their fame, which had initially brought them together, became the very thing that slowly began to tear them apart. On the surface, they looked like the perfect couple, two opposites in harmony. But behind the glossy exterior, their relationship was unraveling. To the public, Valerie and Eddie's relationship seemed like a fairy tale, a harmonious union of two seemingly incompatible worlds, the TV darling and the rock legend. It captivated the public's imagination, becoming a symbol of Hollywood's ideal love story. But behind closed doors, the reality was far more complicated. The demands of their careers, their clashing ways of handling fame, and deeply personal struggles began to take a toll on their relationship. What once seemed like small issues grew into deep, insurmountable cracks. Those cracks, once tiny and barely noticeable, gradually deepened into emotional chasms that no one could ignore. By the early 1980s, Eddie's battles with addiction had become impossible to overlook. What started as casual substance use slowly escalated into something far darker. Eddie, the electrifying rock star full of energy, found himself caught in a destructive cycle of drugs and alcohol. These habits didn't just take a toll on Eddie's body, they began to consume their relationship as well. Valerie, once proud to be by her husband's side, found herself fighting to save a marriage that was slowly disintegrating. She watched as Eddie spiraled, standing by helplessly as addiction took hold of him. It was a heartbreaking transformation for both of them. Valerie kept hoping that the next rehab stint would work, that somehow things would improve. But with each failed attempt, the emotional distance between them grew wider. Valerie, once the loving wife, now found herself desperately clinging to a marriage teetering on the edge. She had become a woman who wasn't just trying to love her husband, but to save him. She had long given up her own needs and dreams, hoping only for Eddie's recovery and for their relationship to return to what it once was. But the addiction never loosened its grip. In time, Valerie found the strength to step away, but the years of pain, silent battles, and shattered dreams stayed with her. It wasn't until much later that she began to speak openly about what really happened behind the scenes, the silent fights, the constant arguments, and the emotional scars that never healed. These were the moments that didn't make headlines, but they were the ones that ultimately tore their bond apart. The relationship that seemed perfect from the outside had been slowly eroding from within. And by the time they parted ways, the love story that captivated millions was nothing more than a painful memory of what might have been. Valerie's journey with Eddie was one of highs and lows, of public adoration and private heartache. It was a reminder that even the most glamorous love stories can be filled with unseen struggles, struggles that can only be understood by those living them. But in the end, Valerie found the strength to move on, to let go of the past, and to focus on the future. Valerie Bertinelli's journey was filled with hope, love, and heartbreak. She once believed that love could conquer all, that no matter how hard life got, the bond she shared with Eddie Van Halen could withstand it. But the harsh reality was far more complicated than anyone could have imagined. Their marriage, which had once seemed like a perfect union between a TV star and a rock legend, was secretly crumbling under the weight of addiction, emotional neglect, and unspoken pain. For years, Valerie held on, believing that Eddie could return to the man she had once fallen in love with. There were moments of hope, brief sparks when Eddie got sober, and Valerie allowed herself to believe they had a chance. Each time he pulled himself out of the darkness, she believed it was their turning point. But every time, addiction pulled him back, and the painful cycle began again. Valerie wasn't just fighting for her marriage, she was fighting for Eddie, the man she still loved deeply. She carried that burden for years, holding on when most people would have let go. However, the damage was relentless. Eddie's health began to deteriorate under the crushing weight of his addiction. No matter how much love Valerie poured into their relationship, no matter how much strength she showed, the chaos kept coming. She was forced to confront the heartbreaking realization that sometimes love alone isn't enough to save someone from themselves. When Eddie was diagnosed with mouth cancer, the world couldn't fully comprehend the gravity of his condition. A third of his tongue had to be surgically removed, an ordeal that was especially devastating for a man whose life had been defined by music and self-expression. Despite the seriousness of his illness, Eddie continued to smoke and drink, unable to break free from the habits that had been ingrained in him for years. As his health steadily declined, Valerie found herself helpless, watching the man she loved destroy himself, unable to stop it. Valerie's role in Eddie's life shifted from wife to caretaker. Managing doctor appointments, overseeing treatments, and dealing with mounting medical bills became her new normal. But while her days were consumed by responsibility, her inner world was quietly falling apart. Living with someone who was physically present but emotionally unreachable left Valerie feeling desperately alone. The man who had once filled her life with excitement and passion was now a mere shadow of himself, and Valerie was left carrying the emotional weight of a marriage that was slowly fading. Despite the overwhelming emotional distance between them, both Valerie and Eddie tried to fill the growing emptiness in their relationship. But every attempt to reconnect only seemed to deepen the divide. During one of the darkest times in their marriage, Valerie confessed something she had buried for years: she had an affair. It wasn't about betrayal, she explained, it was about loneliness. The aching need to feel seen, valued, and loved in a home where those needs went unmet for so long led her to seek connection elsewhere. There was no pride in her admission, only sorrow that reflected years of silent suffering and a love that had become more painful than comforting. Over time, Valerie developed an eating disorder as a way to cope with the overwhelming emotions and the deep loneliness she felt. As the weight slowly crept on, she became a target for the media's harsh criticism. The once celebrated TV beauty was now subjected to cruel headlines about her appearance. The pressure pushed her further into isolation. She withdrew from the spotlight, avoided social events, and distanced herself from even those closest to her. Valerie was living in a painful, silent space, a shell of the vibrant woman audiences had once adored. While her marriage slowly crumbled, Valerie clung to the hope that love could conquer the chaos. She held on to the belief that, somehow, they could find their way back to each other. But love, no matter how sincere, couldn't fix what had already been broken. Valerie's emotions became a tangled web of pain, loyalty, exhaustion, and resilience, all colliding within a woman who was desperately trying to survive what felt like a slow emotional collapse. She wasn't just mourning a marriage, she was mourning the life she thought they would have, and the version of herself that seemed to disappear in the process. By 2001, rumors about Valerie and Eddie's marriage began to swirl. The public, once captivated by their seemingly perfect union, could hardly believe the news when Valerie and Eddie quietly announced their separation after 26 years together. There were no explosive scandals or public fights, just a simple statement, and then silence. The lack of drama only fueled the curiosity. Both Valerie and Eddie disappeared from the public eye, maintaining near total privacy for the next 6 years. Their divorce wasn't finalized until December 2007, but during that time, the media had nothing to report. Valerie, once seen as the steady half of Hollywood's golden couple, chose complete silence. She gave no interviews, issued no statements, and stayed far away from any attempt to explain what went wrong.